Hi folks, my name is Linda Emmett and welcome to Happiness is an Inside Job. We are the creators of our own reality, we create our own lives. Our mind is our biggest limit and it's our own beliefs, behaviours and habits constantly caught in those cycles that keep us trapped where we are and stand in the way of our own happiness. So throughout this podcast, we're going to take a deep dive into some of those beliefs, habits and patterns, where they show up in your lives and what you can do to change them. Hi folks, on this week's podcast we're going to talk about your perception is your reality. What that means and how it impacts us in our day-to-day life. So our perception is our interpretation, how we see the world and how we see ourselves. So how we view the world around us, how we experience it, that all comes from our perception and that dictates the reality that we live in. Our perception is built on our beliefs and our past experiences. And an example, say, of perception is, like, say I said to you now, wow, it's 9:30 at night. You might say to yourself, oh, it's still early, that's grand, it's only 9:30. Someone else might say, oh God, that's very late. I'm not going to be able to get up on time in the morning. That's our perception. That's how we perceive what 9:30 is, because it means something different to each of us, depending on, as I say, our experience, beliefs, and how we live our lives. Another example of perception is, if I say to you now, I'm going to tell you a short story. So take a couple of moments to picture it. And it just really take a minute while you're there listening to this pod, just take a moment to picture, say, Lucy went to the beach with her dog to play fetch. And take a moment just to picture that. So Lucy went to the beach with her dog to play fetch. Now, first off, what dog did you picture? That's your perception. What did Lucy look like? Where was the beach? Was it foreign? Was it sunny? Was it dark? Was it in Ireland? Was it stony? Now, science actually says to us that most of us either predicted or seen our own dog or a retriever, because naturally when we think of a dog fetching, we think of a retriever. But I mean, like, we can all picture, I know that certainly didn't happen for me, but this is an example of what our perception is. Every one of us, everyone listening here, and every single one of us as human beings has a different perception coming from our own personal experiences and our own beliefs. So everyone's perception is different. How we interpret a text message, how we interpret an email, how we interpret any conversation, any communication, how we interpret someone else's behavior, their facial expressions. All of this is our perception. It's what we believe. And here's an absolute light bulb moment. Bing. That was me doing sound effects. Hope you liked it. That was the light bulb. But the light bulb moment is, it's all in our heads. That's where our perception is created. The expression we see on someone's face, say for example, a frown. We see someone frowning. We might assume or perceive that they're frowning because of something we said, because of how we look, because of whatever reason we assume they're frowning is our perception. It's the reason we decided that they're frowning. All of this is based on our perception, and a lot of our perception comes from assumption. We assume a lot, again, based on past experiences of similar situations, and we make a lot of assumptions. And an assumption is when we tell ourselves that something is true without actually having any evidence at all to back it up. Like, as I say, that example of someone frowning. We've decided they're frowning because of something we said. They don't want to do the particular task, whatever it is, whatever we've thought of in that moment is our assumption of that situation. And in a lot of ways, our brain is designed to make assumptions. It searches for patterns. It does this because it's an energy efficient machine. Our brain is an absolute supercomputer, and it seeks patterns in everything. So it will look for, if we see someone frowning, it thinks of the last time seen someone frowning, and it compares to your past experiences why others were frowning. And that then, depending on what your brain decides is the reason, is what you decide about that situation. If your brain decides from past experiences they're frowning because, you know, your work isn't correct, or they're not happy with you in some way, that shifts your emotional state. That brings you, that ignites negative emotions within you, because if your perception is they're frowning because of your work, something you said, how you are, then you can potentially get defensive. You're starting to feel a bit negative. You're starting to question yourself, all from your own perception, all because you've assumed, due to your brain pulling in possibly similar situations. It could be pulling in that time you got 2 X's on your homework and you only got 6 corrects. These are like, we pull from every past experience. So it's definitely not necessarily true of today, but it's certainly how it all forms our perception. So learning to be aware of our own assumptions, about other people, our own assumptions about situations, all the things that we're assuming. Because what happens is, when we're assuming things, we stop asking questions. We assume we know the answer. If someone's in a bad mood, if a partner comes in a bad mood, or a parent, a sister, a sibling, whoever, and we're assuming why they're in a bad mood, or they're sad or upset, we're going, oh, do you know what, I'll leave them alone. They're in a bad mood because of work, or they're in their horrors, or they're in, and we don't even ask because we've assumed. And again, our assumptions come from our perception, and our perception can really, really limit us. Your perception is one of the big, our perception, sorry, is one of our biggest opponents. It's one of the things that we're really, really up against when we want to reach our goals, when we want to achieve more. If your perception is, you know, for example, I have to work extremely hard for everything I do, for every penny I get, for any achievement I achieve. I have to work really, really hard, and I'll be working till I'm in my late 60s, early 70s. That's your perception of how your life is going to be. So that dictates how you will live your life. That dictates whether you will invest in Bitcoin, do the lotto, invest in whatever it is, shift your life in the direction of you not having to work till you're 65, 70. If your perception is that's your lot, that's your life, that's how you live, that's how you'll behave. So looking at what our own perceptions is powerful in lifting our own limits. Because perception itself really, really limits how we live. So finding out what we perceive to be true about ourselves, about work, about our careers, about love. Perception shows up a lot in our love lives, in whether we do or don't have one, how we behave within our love lives, and what boundaries we do or don't set. We can have perceptions about males as a whole. We can have perceptions about females as a whole. There's absolutely no way our perceptions can be true, because there's nearly 8 billion people on this planet, and we certainly have not met the roughly 4 billion males or 4 billion females. Our perceptions are coming from the limited experiences we've had. So it's not true. So questioning your perceptions, because if you decide, for an example, you know, all men that work in a particular profession are players, or are, you know, not trustworthy, or any of these things. All men that gamble, or all women that dress a particular way, or all women that are career focused, if you're perceiving and deciding things about them before you know any of them, you've already decided the outcome and you've based all that on your assumptions. So looking at, again, as I say, at what we perceive has a huge impact, because what we see effectively is what we get. What we're seeing in the world, what we believe we are entitled to, what we believe we deserve, dictates hugely how we feel, how we live, and how we are, how we show up in situations. I mean, like, thinking of it from another angle, guys. If someone walked up to you today and said to you, you know, you're a waste of space, how that lands is dependent on what you perceive about yourself. If you have low self-worth and you perceive that, you know, you are a waste of space or you aren't a great person, what will happen in that scenario could effectively be, oh my God, it's true, I am a waste of space. If you don't perceive that to be true, you look at that other person and go, whoa, that's nasty, that's very bad behavior, wonder why he said that. And that's the difference in your perception. And that's the things your perception can impact. It impacts how what other people say to you lands. Because if you perceive it to be true, if you believe about yourself anyway, it'll land a hell of a lot harder. You won't be putting their behaviours back on them. You'll be turning it on you. You'll be, oh, I deserve that. I am a waste of space. And these are the differences. These are ways it shows up in our everyday life. And these things can dictate how we feel. We form perceptions even when we meet people. We form a perception about people in 0.8 seconds. That's less than the gap between two heartbeats. And we base this all on social cues. And there's a huge amount of science behind it. And we assume so much about people, it can block us getting to know them. So going into any situation, being aware of your own perceptions and assumptions and saying to yourself beforehand, I am going to have an open mind here. I'm going to be open about who this person is and not what I'm assuming, not what I'm thinking, because it is just based on our own experiences and beliefs. And as I say, we will never know every human on the planet, and every human is unique. So our assumptions aren't at all necessarily true. It's just how we're viewing the world. So when we're going into a situation, viewing it with an open mind, being open to hearing who this person is, listening to who this person is, getting to know this person as who they are, a unique individual, a brand new human being, and not basing it on, you know, oh, my heart was hurt before, or when I met people like this. And of course, we do have natural instincts to protect ourselves. And I'm not saying by any means, don't keep boundaries in play. Don't, you know, absolutely keep your boundaries in play, but just allow yourself to be open and not to fully come from your own perceptions, and not completely not let people in because you were possibly hurt in the past, or a person like them that dressed like them one time, you know, cut you up in a car park. I don't mean cut you up with a knife, I meant cut you up with their car, they cut across you now. Just we're not getting that violent. But as I say, just learning and building back in that open-mindedness, because our perception can really close us off. Our perception can also have us feeling like a victim of life rather than actually living our lives. Like, if we believe everything happens to me, another thing's after happening to me, then that happened to me, then something else. We're literally building that, and your brain is actively searching for more things that have happened to you, because that's where your focus is going. It's finding more things that happened to you. Oh, me tire went flat. Oh, do you remember 2 weeks ago when, you know, you lost your car keys, or when you couldn't find your bank card? It's finding all the things that went wrong. That's where your focus is. So looking at whether you're believing absolutely everything in life happens to you, whether you feel like a victim, because if that's how you feel, that's what you will be seeing. And shifting your mindset and shifting your perception is something else that you build in. We all hear the word manifestation thrown around a huge amount, and especially in the past number of years. And manifestation is another way for reprogramming your mind. by focusing on the positive and believing you have all you need and you are already all you want to be. That is the nature of manifestation. It's shifting towards the positive. It's manifesting what you want and not focusing on all you don't want. Because we have a natural habit of focusing on everything that we don't want. And that shifts our perception. That's where our brains engage, that's where we're firing neurons, that's what we're looking at. So, as I say, the very nature of manifestation and is calling in what you want, is focusing on all you want, is believing your worth, is stating those affirmations, is building that inner belief, is shifting that perception. So it's just manifestation, it's just another tool, another way of shifting your perception, because your perception is how you are living. It is how you're viewing life. It is how you're viewing yourself. Whether you believe you deserve to be in an abusive or toxic relationship, whether you believe you deserve to be in a relationship at all, whether you believe you deserve a job promotion, whether you go for that role in the first place, that all comes from your perception. Whether you believe people are trustworthy or not trustworthy, that comes from your perception, and it dictates whether you allow people in or whether you don't. Whether you live a life filled with friends, filled with joy and filled with happiness, or whether you choose to isolate yourself from the world and keep your world extremely small, all comes from your perception. And it is choice. In any given moment, we can choose to change. Our brain is a phenomenal shapeshifter, and it is shaped by our experiences. We create our experiences. Yes, we've all had a past. Yes, we've all had hurt, we've had pain. We've had a number of those things, but it doesn't mean in this given moment that we can't choose to live how we choose to live now. Choose to start shifting our own perceptions of who we are, what our reality is. There is no difference. I mean, like, I even watched there a while back. And I'll watch a number of the greats on different biographies, different talks, different things like that. And one of the things that rings true through all of them, that all the thought leaders, all the champions that got to where they were and are living the life they want to do, living a completely different reality to the one they were born into, is belief. Is they believed they could, no matter what. That's what they had instilled and kept driving through. I was watching, I think it was Kanye West, and it was just a quote by him. There, it was yesterday or the day before, and he was sitting and he was in a talk, and he said, he said the difference is, he says perception is absolutely everything. He says if you believe you can't, you won't, because you won't even try. He says, where I believed I could, I believe still I can have anything and I can do anything. And that's the difference. That's his perception. He believes he can do anything and he can achieve anything. And look at where he is. Look at all those people that we admire. The people that, one of the things I want to do now is write a book. And I'm looking at all those famous authors out there, and I'm asking myself the question, well, Linda, what's the difference? The difference is they did it. They believed they could. They sat down. They started writing. They stepped over the threshold. They took action. That's the difference between them and me right now. They believed they could. They did it. And that's all it takes. And shifting your perception is so simple. And it just, one, means being aware of where we're making assumptions. Don't hammer yourself. We all have bias. We all have assumptions. Our brain is trained. But building in and being open to that there are other possibilities. If you want to achieve dreams, if you want those goals, whatever they are to you, it's believing you can and just taking the first step. Not seeing the whole staircase, just taking that first point of action. Like me sitting down and writing the title to a book. I know, and I can say that 100% to you guys even now, I know I will write the book. I know I will. And that's my belief. So you're guaranteed that you will see a book or hear of a book, probably from me on this podcast. out there one day where I'm announcing, yes, I have wrote that book. And I even remember going back, it was last November, and I went out and I met this guy. He runs his own podcast, lovely guy, and he was doing a live podcast with two authors on the stage, and they were lovely women who'd wrote great books. And he asked me then at the end, he wanted me to take photos of him with the authors. And I remember saying to him, see this stage, we will be back on this and you'll be interviewing me about my book, the book that I wrote. And I meant that then and I mean that now. And that's the difference. Whether I believe I can or I believe I can't. And that's true of all of us. We are our own biggest limits, and our limits come from our perceptions. So whatever it is, it's asking yourself, what am I perceiving here? Because I'm creating my own reality. Like for me, say the book again as an example. I could say to myself, right, I'm going to be working till I'm 65, 70. Or, right, a part of what I'm going to do in my business is I'm going to write a book. It's going to be absolutely epic. I'm going to be amazing and show up on all the marketing platforms, really launch this book, and this book is going to make me millions. And I'll have financial freedom, and that'll be how I'm living then, on me canoe in Bali, even though I can't swim. But that's the difference, guys, is that's the reality I'm painting. That's what I'm creating. That's what I'm going to move towards, amongst other things. And that's what I'm geared towards. And it's me believing I can and driving towards that. Me writing and starting the script for the book and taking the steps to move towards that. And this is just an example of us choosing our own reality and choosing what we believe we can do and shifting our own perception. So looking at your own lives, looking at what you want to change, what is standing in your way, what are your blocks, what are your mind's blocks, what's your mind telling you, what's the can'ts, why are you telling yourself you can't? And then looking at everybody that did, and you're all but guaranteed the only difference between them and you is not intellect, not beauty, not any of these things you're telling yourself. You have all that in buckets. The difference is they just did it because they perceived they could, so they did. Remember, guys, it's an absolutely powerful thing. You have great power. You choose your reality. Your reality is your choice. So whatever you want to change, all you're changing is the I can'ts to the I can'ts. It's only how you're perceiving it. And fear's not real. Most of our fears we are making up in our internal world, and it is all that's standing in your way. Seek your supports, believe you can, and shift your reality to what you want. And it shows up in everything. It shows up in what we want for our bodies, what we want for our work life, what we want for our careers. Choose your reality and shift. Make those choices for yourselves, because you absolutely deserve it. And it's one of the greatest gifts that we have. We have the power to change anything we choose. And it's just shifting our internal worlds. So I want to be hearing on posts from all of you now in the next few weeks, what you've shifted and what you've changed for yourselves. And paint yourself a brand new, fabulous and beautiful reality in any aspect of your life that you choose. So that's it for me for this week, guys. I hope you really enjoyed it and got some fabulous takeaways. And as always, I invite you to connect in with me across social media, or check me out on my website, www.yourgifttoyou.com, or email me, linda@yourgifttoyou.com, guys, because I'd love to hear from you and any topics you'd like for us to talk about, or any more learnings that you want. And please remember, give me those reviews, because it keeps the podcast getting out there to more people. So chat to you very soon, guys. Bye bye.